be drifting in their dreamy state from doll making. So the people online who haven't decided that it's dinner time as yet, just to let you know that down, the people that are in the room here have been wafting off down under the trees by the lake, doing all sorts of wonderful creative expression. And I do see a preponderance of dolls. Perhaps we could see all the dolls in the room. They're not our dolls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Fantastic.
What about the sign?
So sewing in the session is entirely admissible. Feel free to keep sewing.
Because I haven't.
It can promote your concentration. So there've been sewing. There's been some fabulous calligraphy on leaves and petals. Anybody got any calligraphy they want to share? And there's, oh yes, here's some calligraphy. Can I show people? Here we go. So there's some nice examples of calligraphy, and there's also been some sign making. Oh, Sultana's got some of hers at the back there. Okay, if you were so angry and are so angry you made a sign, hold it up for us. Yay. Fantastic wake up world action. I saw lots of others down there.
What's wrong with the kisses?
No, don't speak action.
Thank you. I thought they were kisses too.
It's so interesting how people interpret sign. So just to let you know, the way this last section for those of you who are in the room will run is that we will be hearing from our last change makers, last but definitely not least, Shaheen and Emma from the Museum of Freedom and Tolerance. And so they'll stir us all into action after you've all been blissing out down there under the trees. And then we'll have our last 20 minutes just bringing in the threads and capturing what it is that you've been reflecting on throughout the day with Alex and Elizabeth with your little cards. So if you've forgotten about them or they've been tucked in your bag, get them out, start writing. And Shanali and Zoe will just give us a quick look at what they've been creating over in the corner through the day. And at the close of that, those of you who are here with us can come and join us for a drink, and those of you at home raise a glass on behalf of action and demonstration. So that's just how we'll run today, but for those of you who haven't picked up throughout the day, I'm June Morehouse. I'm co-CEO with Monica at Community Arts Network, which is a privilege to share with Monica and to lead the amazing team that we get to work with. So in this final session, as I said, we're hearing from a highly valued partner of CAN's, and our first collaboration was, what year? 2018. And we worked together, it was the 70th anniversary of the Declaration of Human Rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And so we undertook a project together with young people reinterpreting the articles, the 30 articles of that declaration, and that relates in part to the fantastic project that Shaheen and her team have been working on for 30 weeks. And she's going to share that with us. But just so you understand that Museum of Freedom and Tolerance was founded in 2012. It's a creative cultural think tank, or a museum without walls. And it's become a real driving force in the discussion of human rights here in Perth, using arts and technology to particularly amplify the histories and voices of communities that are marginalised by race and religion. And I'd have to say that as inaugural CEO in the last couple of years, Shaheen has been a powerhouse within that organisation and gathered around her a wonderfully diverse and interdisciplinary team who are creating some really innovative approaches to their work at this intersection of art and technology. So today we have Shaheen and General Manager Emma Gibbons, and they're going to just explain to us how they've run this human rights and human responsibilities campaign that's extended across what's been a remarkable year, and particularly tracking the impact that COVID-19 has had on people's human rights, both here in Australia and globally. So out of that community-driven campaign, as you're going to see, as it reaches the end of 30 weeks, and I do think that that takes serious stamina, 30 weeks, it's accumulated a trove of resources, responses, ideas and creative expression and stories that become a really valuable legacy of what everybody calls an unprecedented year. So it's a real gift that will go on giving, and it will be online. It's an ongoing resource, and I'm sure that Shaheen and Emma will tell us more about it and how to stay involved. Thanks.
Thanks, June. So we'll start by introducing ourselves. As June said, I'm Shaheen. I'm the CEO of the Museum of Freedom and Tolerance, and I'd just like to say thank you to Can and to all of you for sharing this incredible day with us, and to pay our deep, deep respects to the traditional owners of this land that we are extraordinarily lucky to be part of and to make change and to heal on. Emma, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I come from the land of cold, dark places is how I like to describe it. Alaska and northern Minnesota is where I hail from, and then you know, I come from a long line of migrants, really. My grandma moved to Minnesota from Finland, my parents moved to Alaska, and now I've moved to Australia. And so while I've been unpacking my relationship to this land and to the living culture that exists in Australia, I've been just in awe really, that can exist, because I haven't experienced that in my family. We certainly carry our traditions with us, but the land is a bit more fights back, I suppose, perhaps. So yes, I just want to also extend my thanks and respect to the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects, as I said, to elders past, present, and emerging. I'm a political campaigner by trade. I've worked on grassroots movements for over a decade now, across the U.S. And internationally, which is what brought me here. Minnesota and Wisconsin is where I cut my teeth, and I know we've all been checking out those states in the last couple of days, so I'm very proud of my friends back home and flipped it, girls. And I think a year ago came and joined the museum and worked with Shaheen, and I was just so excited by the prospect of moving from a political space where you know, the language is often divisive, it's at the fringes, it's very pointy, it's very argumentative, and what Shaheen has really done at the museum, and what we tried to do, is speak to the center and create a safe space to start those conversations with the majority of us. And so it's really inspiring work, and really glad that we've done this campaign together.
We've had a lot of fun, and we've had an enormous amount of fun today, so sorry to drag you all from that beautiful space outside and back into this room. We've had so much fun, we can't actually remember what we were supposed to be talking about. Except, I think, to say, you know, going back to where the idea today originated from, is it's really a demonstration of the power of arts and creativity to heal a very, very tired, broken and divided world. And both of us have corporate advocacy, research, policy backgrounds, and we've really found our home in the arts, because that's really where change happens. And it's been a difficult year, but just look, you know, at the strength and the energy in the room. So at MFT, we really believe in this idea of the arts being able to change the world. We sit at the intersection of the arts and the social justice sector, and we try and use the arts to connect between us in a really multidisciplinary fashion. So across the wide spectrum of arts and creativity, technology, media, people working in social justice, because sometimes we tend to work in silos, but we're all saying the same thing. We all want positive change, and the arts gives us a sort of pathway to connect in a really safe and accessible way. When you talk about human rights, it can seem prickly, it can seem difficult and inaccessible. Human rights are some of the most beautiful things we have, and when we, interrogate the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and its 30 articles, there's everything in there. There's all the architecture we need to build the bridges between us and to actually have, and you've all received cards, which we'll talk to a bit later, these essential human qualities of freedom, equality, dignity, and to them we've added hope, joy and belonging, because as a tired and divided world, that's what we need to use our human rights for. In this campaign, something that was really important to us was to also talk about responsibility, because with every human right that you have a responsibility to ensure that the person sitting next to you, that the person across the world from you also has those rights. And a lot of conversations came up during our campaign where, different cultures were talking to us and talking about rights in the context of, African culture or, Confucian culture being much more seated in collectivism and responsibility and not being about these individual frameworks that we uphold to the exclusion of others. So, at all times of great upheaval, and 2020 certainly has been one of those years, the arts have come to our rescue, from the civil rights movement onwards. The arts have driven protest. You've made protest signs today. They've actually given us the language to speak about change. If we want to talk about decolonisation, that's where it is, because it's where we can stretch narrative, where we can develop empathy, where we can imagine new futures that we can all live in, that the system doesn't actually provide for us. So each and every one of us in this room has the power to go out with those messages and to be able to relate them to the framework of human rights. We thought was really important, because it gives you language to talk across divides to others and to kind of depoliticise what human rights means. Human rights shouldn't sit on one side of the political spectrum or the other. They kind of belong to all of us. So back in March, I didn't quite realise how difficult the year was going to be, but we had the bright idea of starting this 30-week campaign. One a week to take us through a 6-month queue. To use each week, we were all sort of in lockdown, even in Perth at that stage, to talk about a different element of the Universal Declaration, really to bring it to life through conversation, through a social sort of media like a Facebook group, through haiku poetry, which many people have submitted, talk about human rights in the way they exist for you. What does freedom look like? We're actually going to ask you in a little bit. We understood that the long ride that COVID has ended up being was an opportunity to test this fragile framework of rights.
Slide to the previous one, just to stick on the main one while you're talking about the vibe of the campaign.
Yeah, so, we understood quite immediately that for communities already deprived of their human rights, for vulnerable and marginalised communities around the world, COVID was going to be a nightmare, and it has been. It was going to impact people who were already, 80 million people around the world that are displaced, that already have no freedom of movement, people who are homeless and don't have the enjoy the same access to food and shelter that we do. COVID was going to bring all of these people out into the spotlight, and we wanted to make sure that we all had a really good understanding of those issues and the organisations that were striving in, really constrained budgets and difficult circumstances to actually make change in those areas. At the other end of the spectrum, we saw it as an awesome opportunity to educate with empathy, because privileged first world communities all over the world were suddenly understanding in a really visceral way what human rights deprivation was. And it's something like, I can't leave my house, or I can't get toilet paper, which doesn't immediately seem like a human rights deprivation, but it is something that you can't just do. And in the West today, we are kind of used to doing whatever we want. So we heard people kind of inadvertently interrogating their human rights, but I have the freedom of, movement, why can't I move? I have the right to play, but I can't go to the local playground because it's all roped up. I have a right to food and shelter, but, the queues and Coles aren't letting me kind of do my shopping. So we thought it was an awesome opportunity to kind of just create that empathy that, what it actually feels like when you don't have your basic basket of human rights. It feels terrible, actually. And also what it means to have to prioritise different rights. We saw very early on that we all started to prioritise Article 3, which is the right to life, because we decided as a community that was really, really important, and it was worth sacrificing freedom of movement for, worth sacrificing the right to privacy for people's right to life. But all of those conversations really came alive, I think. So do we want to start kind of flicking through? We do it. Or do you want to have a go? Because I feel like I've already
yeah. I think Shaheen said a really good one there about the tension that we were kind of living through, because people were feeling, we were having that trade-off between collective health and individual freedoms. And that was something that was quite a live conversation in Australia here, but certainly in the States as well. And so that was it was fun to unpack it through a campaign like this. So for the first week, we kind of just unpacked these themes of freedom. It was so long ago, I can't remember specifically what we did.
Has been quite a traumatic journey.
It's been wonderful.
I mean, actually, right back at Freedom and
where are we going? Still on Article 1?
Oh, still on Article 1.
Yeah.
The right really, really quickly became a question. Are we all free? Are we all free and equal? Because, the majority of people who were commenting on our Facebook group and, looking at the disadvantages we have in our community through a human rights lens are going, well, we're not, we've fallen over a human right one. We're all free and equal. I'm not sure we are. So, this isn't a redundant instrument that's 75 years old. It's so
75, yes, I said 70. It is
Oh,
75 years.
You just said 75, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's old.
But it was the declaration was created just after World War II, when the world had seen some of the harshest, most difficult times ever, and I feel like we're there again and ready maybe to relearn the lesson that we can't be blasé, we're not all free and equal at all, not even slightly, not in our own community, leave alone outside our doors. So I think that was a really sobering, we started this kind of light and bright campaign about human rights. And
yeah, I think what we found, we worked with a lot of young people in this campaign. A lot of our interns were in that sort of under 25 bracket. And they kept being like, well, how does this relate to today? I don't quite understand how it applies to my daily life. And right from the get-go, we were able to kind of start those conversations and put it into contrast about, how much that isn't, how we need to still defend and uphold our human rights. You want to go to Article 2? Anything on this one?
Yeah, well, I think, again, we had a weird synchronicity between the articles we were looking at and the time we were looking at them. So this was around late April when I think you can sort of flick forward, the news was just coming out that, black and brown people were dying so much, in disproportionate rates to white people. And it was the first time, we talk about racism a lot at MFT, but it's really hard to quantify. And, we're always trying to say that, racism, systemic structural racism has a direct physical and mental, sort of impact on black and brown people around the world. And COVID hit and, cracked this kind of, veneer and showed us that, yeah, absolutely, black and brown people are dying and still in the world at much, much, greater rates than anybody else. And the disparity, it has actually been proven that it's due to health and economic, differences. They're the frontline workers. They're, delivering your food. They're working in the shops. They're a lot poorer and living in, more packed housing. It was quite an eye opener, I think. Looking at the way the pandemic just kind of.
Well, again, those narratives that we didn't hear about in the media necessarily. You had to kind of dig to find it. Article 3, right to life, was one where, if you've done any work in human rights, you encounter these sticky parts where it's like, oh, that language has certainly been co-opted by a different meaning. Oh, how do we talk about right to life without, sparking an abortion debate, really? And so what we did is we curated for the group was we curated a poet actually who we reached out to a poet who had written this poem. She's based in LA, and people have been writing it up and posting it all around their neighborhoods. And he was talking about the beauty of life and what we can all do to live in that. So we kind of skirted around it in our curation of it, but then we also got submissions of poems and then kind of highlighted in the news articles we shared that darker side of this writing. Anything else? No? Keep going. No slavery. Okay, so we had no slavery and no torture back to back. Those are hard weeks to curate, let's just be clear. They were not.
Emma's like, Shaheen, you do it. You like the darkness. You're like, great. I love slavery. It's
She was
fine.
in a meet. She was out of the meeting at one point. I was just like, yeah, she can take it.
But, interestingly, around that time was when, the Prime Minister made that completely ridiculous comment that, there had never been slavery in Australia, which is, maybe if you taught history in schools and universities, people would know that. And so all of this debate came back up, and it gave us an opportunity to share a lot of these stories and also to talk about modern slavery and how, again, the coronavirus has really, really impacted the, people who are in sort of forced labor and forced slavery conditions around the world. Amazing organisations doing work on this around the world that we've been trying to tap into as well to sort of bolster their advocacy and really call attention to just some really simple, ethical fashion. Where are you buying your clothes? Just some really simple things that everybody can do to kind of talk to and uphold this right.
Sure, your back is to all these people,
Sorry.
and the deck is up there.
Where's
How
the
handy
deck?
is that?
I can't see that.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Sorry,
And
everybody.
if you two can just shuffle in front of the day of demonstration, I think the sound will be a bit stronger for those online.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, we're holding the microphones. That's all right.
Shall we sit?
That's good, just not in front of this one. So
Oh, sorry, too far.
Yep.
No, it's
Keep
fine.
going.
We'll keep behind each other.
Keep going.
Keep going, we're on a roll.
No Torture is another one that we curated through an arts lens. We partnered with our first global partner on this, Freedom from Torture UK, and they have a great program. It's very cleverly worded. I can't remember it exactly, but it is a poetry program where torture survivors write poetry to process their trauma. And so we highlighted 3 of those poets in our campaign for this. This is one of the poems, for example. So this is what, I think June said, this is a resource that will live on. We hope to activate this campaign and this database and these resources we've curated ongoing because they're so rich and they're so deep and meaningful. Anything else on this one?
No.
All right. Human rights no matter where you go.
So this was a really interesting week because we start to hit June around this time. Our director, Tara Peake, a Yarra Bunapar woman from Broome, wrote a beautiful piece of commentary for us about, as a lawyer, how rights before the law, are so impactful in terms of, your recognition as a person. So Cara writes these beautiful words: if a person's heart beats, lungs breathe, mind thinks, culture lives, yet they remain without recognition as a person before the law that governs that very existence, do they really exist? A couple of days after, George Floyd dies. George Floyd really can't breathe. Further cracks open in this COVID environment, and June sees the Black Lives Matter protests erupt, racial unrest across America, directly linked to, I think, some of the fragilities in the system that COVID has opened up, but long overdue, right? It was going to happen at some point, and COVID was really the catalyst. So we follow the Black Lives Matter campaign because, again, amazing art is curated during this time, and there's people on the streets, and there's, people with signs, and there's all this incredible work. And there's little Duane who went off to the UN to talk about, his right to, his right to recognition and before the law, his right to, speak in front of a tribunal. The youngest child in the world who has spoken to, gone to the United Nations to speak is a young Aboriginal boy of whom we should be so proud. And we go through June with this whole suite of human rights.
I was going to say, I'm always going to be the person who peeks under the hood. So from a process point, we were looking at this block of from 7 to 13 of very law-based rights, and I was like, oh gosh, how are we going to make these exciting? How are we going to get people engaged? And then Black Lives Matter happened, and all of these things, you are equal before the law. You have rights before the law. You know, you are innocent until proven guilty. All of these were so thematic with the discussions that we were having about Black BLAK here in Australia and Black Lives Matter in the States as well. So it was a very interesting timing that I guess we hadn't planned for yet worked out really interestingly.
Yeah, and you know, we found so many people at this point in time are making signs and making art and taking photographs and writing poetry, and as artists we are the documenters of this age that we hope will never be repeated. But you know, this is unprecedented time, and its art will live on, and it's writing and poetry, and I think, you know, it's important to sit with discomfort, but sit in this moment to understand the last 6 months in this, you know, quite sort of profound context, and how we can kind of go forward and keep those learnings.
Yeah, innocent until proven guilty. George Floyd didn't have that opportunity.
No, and also, you know, how do we relate it to what's happening in Australia? You know, Black Lives Matter is, you know, BLAK Lives Matter. It's a sort of something that didn't just happen on the other side of the world. It's something that's happening right here, right now. And we did a couple of other artistic engagements with Curtin around that time, where we projected, you know, the names of people that had died in custody on the Rainbow Sea container down in Fremantle, and followed it up with a panel session at John Curtin Gallery to really talk about how we can, again, use the arts, because the arts have this wide reach, to, I guess, make people more empathetic to what's happening right on our doorstep.
And the opportunity, again, with that COVID frame, we have a captive audience. They're all at home with their phones, bored, and going to seek more. You know, it was a great, again, that extending that opportunity to educate through empathy and educate through a captive audience. Oh, you know, didn't plan it that way, but really thankful.
But it's nice when you're circulating booklets, and you know, people are reading, totally. And people are learning, and you know, that's been an enormous opportunity to do some human rights, some education.
So right to privacy also played with that tension, but how much privacy are we willing to give up with the state in order for our security and collective health? Remember the COVID Safe app? I don't know how many of you signed up for it. But, you know, was that an infringement of our privacy? The police drones that we saw at the beaches yelling at people to keep a distance, like, you know, how much are we willing to give up some of that sovereignty, if you will, or that individual, you know, rights and space to the government in a time of crisis? And yeah, again, Black Lives Matter was still happening, and Breonna Taylor certainly is an example of privacy being infringed and it resulting in another murder. So.
And also, I think, you know, beyond COVID, how many of these rights are going to be insidiously upheld by right-wing governments around the world that have just been waiting for these opportunities? Oh, great, COVID, you know, we'll fly drones over everyone, or give people ankle bracelets, or, you know, have the right to barge into people's
There's
houses.
no sunset clause on the COVID Safe app. We'll just keep tracking you forever. Like, great.
Luckily, it doesn't work, so no one has downloaded it.
Yeah. And if you will, like, that probably was kind of, at this point, we were getting pretty feisty, and that was probably like a meta driver of this, is that if we can educate people about their human rights when the authoritarian government might be,
Just the sound for people online.
Oh, sorry.
And if you can hold the mic, put it on.
You put it on there and I'll just yell this direction. How about that?
That actually works really well.
Yeah. Okay,
Sorry.
great. I'll just yell over here.
That works well.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, exactly. Like, kind of the meta theme here is to, how can we give people their rights so that they can articulate their rights, defend their rights, and defend the rights of others? That's how we always try to draw that responsibility through this conversation. How do we push back against the government? I know my rights, I defend my rights, and I can defend the rights of others. All right, freedom to move. What do we do for this one?
Well, I don't know. There was plenty of material to, you know, choose from, but you know, we saw it as a huge opportunity again to educate some very privileged communities about, you know, how important it was to move around this land. And I remember Michelle making a comment around that time about the fact that, you know, actually in Perth, how many years ago, you know, we didn't have the right. We didn't have the right to move around this country, and I think, you know, it's a right so many of us, particularly in this room, take for granted. But there's 80 million displaced people around the world currently who can't move. Border closures have, opened our eyes to that. Well, I think we've got a long time ahead in terms of, living with a lack of freedom of movement. And again, it plays into, what are our rights going forward, and what will the government enforce?
It was either between this one or the last one, but remember the Melbourne Tower that everyone was locked in and they were bringing in rations and all that? That was during these 2 weeks as well. So we certainly shared that article and started a discussion about the human rights impacts of that situation. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we got people involved in this campaign in the hotels as well to sort of give us messages. Because again, there is a hard edge to this campaign because it is about human rights, but we can do it in a really beautiful, empathetic and creative way. We take a lot more people with us on the journey.
Awesome. I just watched the time, so we have like 25 minutes.
Oh, I was just like, rush, quick, go.
Right to nationality. This is when we had a Polish woman, an artist here, write about a teapot that and share a picture and a painting that reminds her of her grandma. The smell of sulfur as you light the match, the smell of the fire as her grandma, her nana back in Poland was making this tea, and kind of the ceremony of nationality and remembering that and navigating in Australia, I live in Australia now, but I have all that other history of nationality, and how do we navigate that? And then as well through that, through the Indigenous lens, of course, because this is their nationality. So, Aboriginal, Australia is the Aboriginal nationality. So how do you kind of navigate those frames? Marriage and family, we got Narelda Jacobs. You guys remember her? Yeah, right. She is Perthian and is over in Sydney now, works for Channel 10, a reporter, but she actually comes from a mixed family. She herself was married, has a daughter, divorced, and is now happily a gay woman in a lesbian relationship, right? So she has this huge, rich, beautiful commentary on marriage and family that's just full of love and hope and beauty, and it's really lovely. And if you ever want to pick me up, definitely go give it a read. We also have Tiernan Brady, who provided commentary this week, who ran the Australians for Marriage Equality, the Ireland for Marriage Equality, and the Thailand for Marriage Equality campaigns, and kind of his commentary on where the fight goes now. Yeah. So.
And Narelda's commentary is actually worth going onto our website to read because she ties it back quite profoundly to, her family kind of stolen generations history and these fundamental human rights that were deprived. People did not have the right to be with their family. And we had quite an interesting conversation with her as well because we sent her one of the little books which she'd never seen before. And it's like, people don't sometimes tie in this history to, well, actually, these are basic human rights deprivations. So that was a great week.
The right to your own things. Oh, yeah. So this was my friend Reese. We asked. He gave sort of the Aboriginal perspective. I remember when I was asking him a bunch of questions about acknowledgement of country, and I asked him, why do you say traditional custodians instead of traditional owners, mate? Like, that seems like a trivial language switch, but obviously it makes sense. And he said, well, actually, it's because Aboriginal people don't believe in the idea of ownership. We don't own the land. We don't own anything. It's all collective. It is all shared. It is all fostered and nurtured together. So that's why we are custodians of the land, not owners. And so we just had him give a short video and transcript kind of explaining that concept, the right to own things. And he's like, lol, we don't believe in that. Or, it's not part of my culture, really, which I thought was kind of a good reframe on that. Freedom of thought.
Oh. Yeah, well, this is when we started to do the workshops, and Ellen worked for freedom of thought and the freedom of expression,
yes.
Where we started to go out to, we have worked with Edmund Rice Centre and have done for a long time to actually get kids talking about, whose right it is, how free are you to express yourself, to enable your own freedom of thought, what does it mean? Also, this ties a bit, I think, to the right to protest that's coming up, and obviously, we've all made signs here today, like, what are our rights at this time where governments are cracking down on us, where extremism and terrorism are... Actually, Costa, do you want to say anything about freedom of thought?
Oh, sure. Do they need context? Because I did a piece for Article 18 as part of the campaign, and I guess the central question that I was just prodding was around not where do we draw the line between beliefs and actions, but how, and where do individuals end and other people start. So just this idea of people weaponizing indefensible belief systems, particularly in positions of power, saying, well, as a religious this or as a ideological this, that's our belief, and we are pushing that. And there comes a point where, particularly in a public policy setting, there has to be some level of defensibility or testability with that, and how people weaponize belief. So that's where, and we see it, extremist groups co-opt that language. We see mainstream political groups using that language. And I think it was very close to the time of Bunnings Karen, as she was then known. I made a reference to that in the piece. Yeah. So, it was just this idea of how people use similar language to defend very different beliefs. I guess that's the thing I was hitting upon.
With our intern group and kind of the discussions internally, we took into that, like, in the online space, what are the boundaries of your thought before you're imposing on another person's freedom of thought? Like, where's the line is kind of what we were flirting with. But yeah, again, thank you for such a great thought-provoking question around that. And then, for Freedom of Expression 19, we created ads with a group of kids from Ellenbrook on how, what they think expression means to them. And we had one that was like this beautiful narrated deep history of Black Lives Matter coming from a 12-year-old with this, Martin Luther King voice. I'm like, how is it already that deep? What is happening? And then completely the other spectrum was, freedom of expression through laughter. Just a bunch of kids having a laugh because that's what they thought it meant. So again, the ads are very cute. Definitely recommend it. Rights of public assembly. So again, we just shared photos from the protest movement in Perth, Black Lives Matter, and highlights of the work that Blue Justice had been doing at the time, which was quite exciting. The monuments.
I think that's one of our favourite photos from the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and talk about showing the power of arts and dancing on the graves of these statues. That because during this time as well, the arts industry sort of sector has changed in terms of what people have. The statues coming down, the monuments coming down. People have really, really started during this time to question what art and culture looks like in its permanency, and whose interest it serves. So that's been a really fascinating movement to watch during COVID. That I think again, there's more to come and won't kind of swing back the other way. It's it's kind of been exposed.
The dam is broke and sprang. Right to democracy. Oh, yeah, so this is one we partnered with a group in the U.S. called Rights with Tech, which is a advocacy group of technologists who work together on platforms to promote human rights. So they basically curated some of these questions, curated some of these conversations, sent it out to their networks, and we had a discussion together on a mind map. So this is just, people kind of plugging in their own different crowdsourced opinions on this. And then, of course, because politics in the U.S. election was ramping up, we had a bit of a dialogue within our HRXHR group about it as well.
Very relevant to this week.
Very relevant to this week. Let's talk about democracy and the great experiment. Social Security. So this was kind of this was an interesting shift in the campaign because, the next couple of human rights are very cultural and social rights in a way. And so it's how do we shift? And when we talk about Social Security, it's both my security, but again, that responsibility for everyone's security. Where is the safety net that we all, use and fall within? So this is kind of where we started to articulate that not pivot, but that moving towards responsibility in a greater way.
Yeah, and again, for the first time, people have relied on Social Security, as COVID has hit. If governments in first world countries hadn't sort of come to the party, we would be in a much worse position. I mean, similarly, governments in countries where, their communities can't afford the Social Security, those communities are doing kind of horrifically, disproportionately much worse. I think we've all realised, I've had conversations with people about, Social Security that you would just never, ever imagine having had before.
Well,
what is the safety net for us? No, go on.
Yeah, and the informal Social Security nets as well. We post about buy nothing groups because I don't know about you, but I had to get toilet paper from my local buy nothing group. Hey, ran out, anyone have a spare loo roll? So those sort of informal networks as well as the formal networks if the state can't step in. I mean, I think we all kind of felt during COVID that localization, that push down to local. So certainly feeling.
And this is, I think, where the responsibility side of things, which we're going to now take forward into next year, really kicks in, because human rights aren't this abstract concept that governments will enforce, because clearly they're not enforcing, and in many circumstances doing the opposite. But they are something we can enforce, in our home with our children, in our community, and these whole suite of rights when we go through social security, food, shelter, art, culture, that's in our hands, and not just again for ourselves, but for the person sitting beside us.
I'm laughing because we're like, oh, this will only take 20 minutes. We'll just buzz.
Okay, just go through.
Workers' rights. We partner with unions. We talked about the impacts on workers during COVID. You guys can give that a read. Right to rest and leisure, right to play. This one is so rich and so much fun. This one was a really strong collaboration with the Edmund Rights Center. So we, again, worked with them. They produced art, they produced poems, they produced all these beautiful curated pieces. These are all from young people at the Islamic College down south of the river. And we also did a interview, Bella Moradakeze, oh goodness, I haven't said it out loud, interviewed Craig Foster from SBS talking about the right to play, because he's a soccer player, right? And so how does that actually feed into his own belief system now? It's, again, a really rich interview, definitely give it a listen. Food and shelter for all. This was one we shared some of the work we did with the Homelessness Advisory Council and kind of talked about that. And then again, shared quite a lot of articles about the impacts of COVID. Right to education, we hosted a youth summit. I'll say you actually attended. Do you want to talk about it? No? Apu, right? Yeah. How did you find the youth summit?
It was really lovely to connect with other people from different cultures. It was amazing.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Yeah, so we hosted a group of maybe 20 young people, ages 18 to 25, to talk about just some ideas of, well, it was founded in, if we were to reimagine education, we'd actually probably center and teach about voice a bit more, and teach about storytelling and get people comfortable sharing their voice in storytelling. So Shanali was also a presenter there. Thank you so much. And kind of holding that space for these young people to learn those skills that we wish they would have learned in school. Cultural life. I think we just highlighted some cultural organizations for this one. Curated a group of organizations.
Well, come on, and left. So
oh yeah, that's right. It was only 3 weeks ago, and I'm like, I completely brain farted.
Yeah. It was quite a long campaign.
Yeah, and you guys saw some of that work today, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty much, we had a bit of an interview online and about the same stuff that we spoke about today. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. The place names, there you go. That was my prompt, that was my reminder. Fair and Free World, we had, again, partnered with Rights and Tech, and we had a young person curate a commentary. She was in Libya during the Arab Spring, and so she was writing about her journey and what freedom and a fair and free world looks to her from that experience, and now living in the U.S. and kind of the constant fight and drive for that. Again, being a 22-year-old, I think she is 21, maybe. It was a very optimistic and hopeful lens, and that was really important for us as we accelerated towards the end of this campaign. Responsibility, we actually partnered with a creative writer and human rights doctor, Chematai Glasheen. She wrote us a bit of fiction and also talked about the African principle of Ubuntu and that reciprocity and reciprocation in culture.
And I think this really relates to a lot of conversations we had over the whole 30 weeks in terms of what responsibility is, because it's something we don't necessarily enforce as part of a very sort of individualistic Western, paradigm and approach to human rights. But as earlier in the campaign, we had Sandy Chong, who's the president of the United Nations Association, talk about one of the drafters of the original declaration having that Confucian background and that, really, really deep commitment to the responsibilities inherent in the Human Rights Declaration, which we don't talk about. And if we go way, way, way back, is why we called our campaign HR, because we don't just want to talk about rights. Actually, responsibilities are more important because they're something each and everyone in this room can walk away with and enforce. So that was quite interesting to see that different cultural lens, which again we saw with Reese, the week about property, and also, leads to questioning the Universal Declaration in itself as a kind of modern Western instrument. It's one of the more useful instruments we have, which is why we keep using it, but I think there's so much richness to build on it, from a more kind of intercultural perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then Article 30, no one can take away your human rights. So this is kind of we've curated all this, we've done all this work, we've curated all these cool concepts, and now we're like, okay, where do we go to in 2021? So we, as Shaheen mentioned again, we've developed these 6 themes: freedom, equality, and dignity, which are sort of the core values of human rights. You know, like all the human rights kind of relate to these 3 things. And if your human rights are realized, then you get hope, joy, and belonging. And so the relationship between these is that if we fight for our rights and if we hold, you know, ourselves responsible to upholding these rights for everyone, then we all can realize these great themes of hope, joy, and belonging. And so the campaign was one great experiment, right? 30 weeks of testing and trial and things. We had poems, we had music, we had films, we had interviews, we had all types of stuff. It was a lot. And one of the things that we noticed, though, that was quite magical was actually just the conversations we had sitting around the table as a team discussing and unpacking these rights. The actual curation meetings, exploring and discussing and discovering what these mean to each of us in our current frames in today's world. And so taking that as a key learning, that's why we're actually activating these words as conversation starters. So for 2021, we're going to be using these 6 themes through t-shirts and postcards to actually have a dialogue around these 6 themes. What does freedom mean to you? What does hope mean to you? How do you describe joy? And then actually, after that workshop, the people will be able to go out in the world and start these conversations on their own. They'll be wearing a t-shirt that either says their response or it'll be blank, which also forces our brain to fill it in, right? It's an immediate, you want to jump in and fill it in. So I think a core principle of these conversations is that let's be explorers, not lawyers. You can hear me, I stumbled all around these human rights, and I certainly hadn't read it before this year. Honestly, I'm not a human rights expert yet.
We have lawyers on our team.
We do have lawyers.
It's actually not the side of our creativity we lean into.
Yeah. So like, how do we all explore these concepts? No one's an expert. There's no right and wrong, actually. It's all how we interpret and apply them. So we gave you each a card, and we wanted to kind of test this. We're still in the early days of this project. So on your card, if you wouldn't mind thinking about what your response is to that word, and you can maybe like 2 minutes. And then I'm actually going to get all the people who have the same card to get together and discuss. So we'll have all the joys in a corner and all the freedoms in a corner. And that way we can get up and do a bit of movement as well. So give a bit of a think of what your card and what your response is. And then we'll do it in a pack. Does anyone not have a card? There we go. I knew there were still some. Yeah, 1, 2, and 3.
Do you need a card?
Sharing my cards. Oh, thank you.
Any other cards?
Does anyone want
Number
to
Confession time.
Joy is the truth.
Oh, yeah.
We're sharing.
10.
She's going out. Another couple.
You've already had your thoughts. We're going to do this really quick because we are very short on time. So everybody stand up, and we're going to do freedom, equality, and dignity. Let's see if this works. And we're going to do hope, joy, and belonging. Freedom, there, equality, dignity here in the center, hope over by the wall, freedom or joy by the and belonging also here. If you have gone to your circle, hold up your cards if you know where your mates are. Freedom. Okay, perfect. So find your people and have a quick discussion about your responses. And we're going to take 5 minutes here, and we'll we'll be ending in a rip-roaring fountain.
That's right, Mandy.
I just hope it's funny.
I'm not even 100% sure, though.
Oh, yeah. Good to see you. Have a good weekend. Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you. Little 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Yeah, exactly. We'll see where it goes. Yeah, but thank you. Yeah, have a great weekend. Oh, so they clearly go to it's give them anything, he's going to have more than I need. We need to stop allowing the rhetoric to be like it's okay and it's morally sound. The tax threshold needs to be, once you've got, say 10 million, that's it. You don't get any more. You've won. One capitalism, you get a dog park named after you. Enough. Collectively, rather than individually. So you can be part of. You can, if you're.
The circle is turning, so the money is to be rolling
So how that can work?
Like if you get to 10 million, well, the world stops.
No. So you can have it collectively. So rather than an individual going beyond that threshold, you go beyond that threshold as a team. So a lot of people are driven not just by money but by power. You can't spend more than 10 million.
We have one more minute, and then I'm gonna.
People shouldn't be allowed to own money.
Everybody wrap it up. One more minute. Start working on finish up these discussions and head back to your table.
We need to really ensure that it's there, because otherwise the system stay not the ideal, it's not
And of course, it's very important, but at the same time, there's still going to be bombing trees and lots of people living in poverty.
All right, start wrapping up. We are collecting them if you want to give them to us. If you want to keep it, that totally makes sense. Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
It's as good as put them in one pile.
Because I like to end on an optimistic note, and we have exactly 3 minutes, so this has to be short and sweet. I want to hear one from Hope, Joy, and Belonging, because let's be optimistic about this. So, Hope Group, can you nominate one person to give us a quick 30-second recap of what you discussed? Hope, over there, go.
Hope is the joy of wanting to go somewhere.
Beautiful. Got Hope and Joy in there. Double whammy. Nice. Joy. Someone from the Joy Group. All right.
Joy can be small and tiny and not significant, but it can be accumulated and becomes huge.
Oh, beautiful.
That's what today is just about huge and accumulative. So yeah, today has been joy.
And Belonging. Someone from the Belonging Group. I love how we're nominating each other. You just volunteered
About community, culture, being able to be yourself while being around others, not being alone. And I talked about being part of big queer families and an ecological family as well.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all. We'll be here for drinks and chats afterwards. And we're even back over to you in 2. Is that it? Do you want to close on? No. Okay.
I'll do it. Speak demon. When I saw the 75 slides. But what I was thinking was, you know, my speed of talk, not their speed of talk. So let's hope that our captioner was actually able to caption it. Yeah. Or we can all go online and have a very good laugh. But thank you.
So we do have a website that you can go to for all of this information in slower.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
At your own pace.
Well, I mean, through the portal, you'll be able to access links to all of the material and the website, and also you can replay the vision and see the bits maybe even those of you in the room missed. But it was fantastic. Thank you so much, not just for the presentation you gave us, but for the work you're doing and for all the work to come. It's absolutely fantastic. We love working with you. Thank you. So, a little more reflection. They were gorgeous. I loved Hope, Joy and Belonging. But we're going to get a bit more from Alex and Elizabeth and our Threads team, and Shonali and Zoe. So I'll invite them down to share your thoughts.
Julie, you should do freedom.
No.
Start with, let's just pack away everything you have, because we're going to move part of this thing. So we just want you to have a pen and your thread. So if you have bags and things, just pop them all away. It's a good time to give yourself a bit of a wriggle. Just a bit of a wriggle movement as you're moving things around.
Soften those limbs.
Well, I don't have my phone. So we're going to start off with Zoe and Shonali talking about their beautiful scribing. So if we can all swivel on those wheels. You need the mic? Yeah. You need this.
We just thought it would be easier if we could see what was drawn.
And if you can clip it on, it just avoids the handling noise.
Oh, great. Hi everyone. So Shonali and I have been scribing throughout the day, so we have been listening to the conversation and feeling into the mood of the day and recording that visually and with words. We've kind of created a mural that is both connected but also mirroring our own lens. So that's very much part of what we bring is acknowledging that we have our own way of listening and we pick up different things. And so today felt very much like it started grounding in place on Noongar country on Wajak Budja, and then grew to talk about place names. It felt like it had quite a global stretch as well. When Len talked about deconstructing the colonial discourse everywhere. And then we moved into the beautiful creative hubs and the feeling of being outside by the lake. We came back and had a session on sustainable practice for artists and heard an invitation and a call to arms around how we can build a more sustainable and nurtured future for our sector and what that might look like. And then the rest of the day was captured by Shonali in a the part of the mural that the online people won't be able to see, but we'll upload a picture of the whole thing post-event. Thank you. Okay, so I, like Zoe said, have probably captured some of the things that she's captured as well. So again, started with the grounding on country, and something that I love doing when I scribe with Zoe. So this you are on, and it flows into Wajak Buja. So I think that was really strong, that part of the start of the day. And then the global stretch is that all the way to the galaxies that Len talked about. And then he also talked about the global reassertion of sovereignty of First Nations people and Katajin Bridia, which is the knowledge of the elders. And he talked about the Katanning project. So that's one of the puppets and the place name projects, and coming back to the bosses and layers and living language. And this is our little creative hub space here, which is just such a beautiful space outdoors. It's what I kind of captured here. And because Zoe was mainly sort of listening in to that sustainable arts practice session, I was sort of listening into the mood of the room. And something I really noticed was the music at the start of that presentation at the start had this really interesting, almost heartbeat rhythm to it. So what I've drawn down here is kind of the mood and the rhythm of that session. And it also connected, I did the sign painting in the Creative Hub's first Creative Hub session. And I felt like it connected, a lot of the conversation there was around a climate change protest that was happening next week. And obviously Border Justice was talking a lot about First Nations and Aboriginal, rights and sovereignty. So yeah, there were words there that really connected for me. The other important thing I think that I noticed was there was talk of gaps, and then there was also gaps. So I tried to sort of show that through the black gaps that you see here. And then in the second Creative Hubs, I sat with the aunties doing the Noongar doll making, and Marcel shared her beautiful story about her doll. And so that was really powerful, I thought, and I kind of tried to capture that, a little bit of that here. And then this is the last session that we just listened to, and this, I did some of the calligraphy in the Creative Hub session as well. So that sign means balance and peace, or it means peace, but that one balance, and I thought that kind of really connected in really beautifully what we were talking about at the end. Yeah, and that's just, yeah.
Now we'd like you to open the threads that you currently have and fill in the pink. And does anyone not have threads with them? Does anyone? Right. So this is, we've just had a beautiful walk through the day through One Lens. So this is now your opportunity to fill out any that aren't already filled out, and also the thread I'm taking from today is This is also a moment to look through what's been said and consider which one you might want to share with everybody in the room. Thanks. are now going to voice a collective poem. Hopefully you've chosen one of the different cards you'd like to share with everyone. Can I ask those who want to say a yellow one to come down into this area? Then purple, the next area. Green, the line behind. Then blue. And then we'll have red and then pink. These two rows. And if you can stay standing once you found your spots, please.
Where's yellow? The next one. No one's yellow. It's yellow here.
Yellow here. Yeah. You might want to go behind.
I was trying to avoid you. Red, orange, yellow, green. When Robbie thought you were wiggle.
It's always been my lifelong dream.
There you go.
So yellow here, purple people, green, and then we've got green, and then blue up the back. Yep, there. And then there's red. Red's all here as well. Red's here, and then we have pinks up the back there. So you will want to know, we are going to do a collective poem, and I'm going to read out the beginning of the poem, and then I'm going to go bam, 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 bam. So you want to make sure that you know who you're before and who you're after in the speaking today. Does that make sense? Okay, I'll say it again. So, for example, I will start thing, and then I'll point here, and this person will say, I am here because blah 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 blah. I am here because blah 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 blah, and so on. Although way more poetic than blah blah blah. All right, so we'll do all the yellow ones, and then I'll point to somebody, and that'll be the start, and go along, and then the next and the next. Does that make sense now? Yeah? Cool. So you have an idea of where the flow might go. Lines help in this process.
But you weren't supposed
Okay, let's begin. As we stand here now on this Muadich Nunga Buja Dundala, as we've threaded today through Nunga Kadajan and across to sewing the threads of yarning and listening, of drawing backwards and drawing over, of making statements or whispering on a sign, then a call to arms, to a better future, decoding the calligraphy of the Arabic words for life, deep love, to hope, joy, belonging, and through it all, brains colliding, weaving, threading.
I am here because your stories matter.
I am here to learn more how to make the world a better place.
I'm here because it's my job and I love it.
I am here because connecting is what drives my passion. I love community arts.
I am here because I'm interested in change and I believe change happens creatively from the ground up.
I feel connected to listening, painting, drawing, writing and learning. When we get beyond the big buzzwords and are able to really see, hear, feel, experience and encounter one another and be silly. Let's take the masks off.
I feel connected to Wajak Buja. I feel connected to women sewing together, quietly, busily, happily, and then the stories come.
I was challenged by my girlfriend to be more assertive in sharing my stories and creative experiences.
I was challenged by all that I don't know.
I was challenged by introversion and talking with such welcoming human beings.
I was challenged by navigating parking and flies and my ADHD mind. The treasure is in the toil.
Someone told me I am Aborigine. Yes.
Someone told me everything is possible.
Someone told me about this event, so I'm here to learn. Someone told me that words and phrases in Noongar can have different contexts and need to be verified for places by the Noongars who are there.
Someone told me art is a fluid field, and as a health professional, research and community work can also be considered art. What is art for you?
Someone told me in this unprecedented time, our art and poetry will live on.
Someone told me you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need.
Someone told me this day felt like a gift.
I feel inspired by people.
I feel inspired by Len Collard and his research about place names and to recolonise Australia.
I feel inspired by the lobbying that the sector is doing to improve and support the conditions for artists and art workers.
I feel inspired by people and their stories and their strength.
I feel inspired by story from others.
The thread I'm taking from today is, what's in a name?
The thread I'm taking from today is just how important it is for us to take part in events like today that enrich our minds, hearts and souls.
The thread I'm taking today is breathing the same air of all the creatives in the room and the extension and responsibility as an artist to take out into the broader world.
The thread I'm taking from today is our spirit is stronger than the will of those who would suppress us.
The thread I'm taking from today is that there's much work to be done and there are amazing people around in this room to do the work with.
The thread I'm taking from today is of interconnectedness to country and the people I live amongst.
And on that day of demonstration, we were all threaded a lot closer together.
Oh, it's hard to take up the space after that. Thank you so much. That was just beautiful from all of you. And it is time for us to farewell, but there are some people that really do need to be thanked and acknowledged before we go our ways. For those of you in the room, as I say, that can be just down the corridor for another drink. But just, it's really important, first of all, to thank all of you as came together then so beautifully for participating so fulsomely in this day. And as Ron and Shaheen reflected, when we first started having a conversation about how this day might take form, there were lots of ideas and we wanted it to be many things. And it feels as if it has been many things. And each of us will take away some special thing from it. But it's only been possible because you all took it up with us and shared in it so beautifully. So thank you very much, and to those online. I really want to acknowledge our presenting partners, and that is the Museum of Freedom and Tolerance, not only Shaheen and Emma in the presentation, but Shaheen's been with us from the outset, thinking about how this day might come together and drawing in wonderful people from within their network. To Arts Front, and there's a whole team behind this going online and being made available on the platform. It's been fantastic to be able to really partner with national partners based in Queensland who've been driving these kinds of conversations about the future of the arts for many years. And it's just great that we could access your knowledge and skills. So particular thanks to Norm Horton and Elliot Bledsoe for all the work they've put in. To Creative Recovery Network and Scotia, who is largely a one-woman show, it has to be said. I mean, you know, often it can seem like there's big organisations behind all this action, and very often it's quite small organisations that are making a really big difference. So to Scotia and Creative Recovery Network for the partnership that we've had on the pilot project. The City of Joondalup and Lindsay Trench Murphy, are you still here, Lindsay? She had to go, but has been wonderful in working with us to facilitate the support around the venue and the catering. And it's been great to be able to partner with the local government authority in this. And to ECU Joondalup, who've been very generous in the provision of this space and supporting us with the tech. I want to thank all our Changemaker presenters and also our MCs. So Costa, who's looked after our online crew, thank you so much. To Sheila Magadza, who facilitated the session with Scotia. To Ron Bradfield, who kicked us off so beautifully at the beginning of the day and was also one of the people contributing to the discussions about this day, and I think was the one that coined Day of Demonstration. It was finally, when he came up with that, it was like, yes, because it's about demonstrating out in the street with your sign, and it's about demonstrating how art works, and it's about being able to go to a creative hub and then come back and talk and think and go out and make, like the Day of Demonstration. And to Anne Dunn, who facilitated the casual inquiry online. And if you weren't able to join that because you're busy making, you can go back online and look at that discussion. To all our workshop artists on site and online, it's been a gorgeous day. I know how much you've all enjoyed it. Many of them have gone, but it's been really special to have you here with us, and we thank you very much. And of course to our threaders, the flock crew, part of the flock crew, Zoe, Alex, Elizabeth and Shanali. It's been that was a beautiful way of getting... Didn't I say Zoe? Yes. No. See, we're all little managers in a can. Yeah, it's been beautiful to have that reflection, and the idea of one person trying to stand up and sum up what today was about was never going to get us there. So that was just glorious. Thank you so much. I would like to acknowledge CAN's key funders, and that's the state government through the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries. And importantly, it is through that money that that's what underpins our sector development work. As many of you would be aware, service organisations are not well funded anymore. So organisations like Arts Front and like Creative Recovery Network have struggled in these more recent times. And I think CAN's only really survived because it's been working so hard in community projects, and it was able to segue into that area of work. So now this work is, we don't have as much money to invest in it. And that's something for us to think about in relation to how the arts sector moves forward. But it is through the state government that we're able to put some funds towards this work, and it feels really important to us to be able to bring people together. To Lottery West, who support our Dream Plan Do and Story Street programs, which are so important. To the Australia Council, who've supported for 4 years Rekindling Stories on Country, which has allowed us to keep sharing and telling the stories of our Noongar communities. And in the years coming ahead, our funding from Australia Council is building towards greater intercultural projects on the principle of First Peoples First. And the Australian Government through the Indigenous Language and Arts Program, which is the underpinning of our place names work over the last 5 years for CAN, which all of you got to really get a handle on this morning with Len and Monica, and our Lullabies program, which also provided an online workshop today with Charmaine and Phil. So we do, like, it wouldn't happen without our funders, so that's not a glib thank you, that's a very serious thank you for allowing us to make this work. Also the CAN team, it is an extraordinary team. I know Mon and I both feel really privileged to work with the group that we do. They put so much care and enthusiasm into everything that we do, and we do have a lot of fun. So this has been a team effort by many people, but there are some we need to do some special thanks for, and I think Mon's standing by with prezzies. So firstly, we'd just like to thank you, Costa. Thanks so much for keeping everybody together online. We'd like to thank Peter Chen. It's a complex little desk he's been managing up here.
These two barely got to leave, did they?
And these guys were just pretty much planted here for the whole time. So thanks so much for making that smooth, Peter. To Induta and Sarah. Thank you for being runners and do-everythingers and just always contributing so warmly in our team. And then there are two very special people who we need to thank, and that's Jill and Miranda. So Jill Brown is our artist manager at CAN and looks after the sector development area and has really been following this journey all through. So thank you so much, Jill, for all of your work. Jill also coordinates with Scotia at the monthly Making Time Online if you're looking for the peer-to-peer support. So talk to Jill over drinks. Miranda is just the all-time whiz kid at CAN, operations manager, and I think just always runs around all the edges, doesn't she, Jill? And makes everything happen. So all the liaison with the Arts Front crew and with the venue and with Peter and, yeah.
Picking it up on top of your standard operation.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at the same time, somehow, miraculously, new laptops arrived on our desks through Miranda's work, so that was...
She's also very good at stitching dolls.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Or are you getting still... You getting to that?
Yeah, we are getting to that. Because not getting into any of those categories, but really very special to us is the fact that ESOP's Foundation has come on a journey with us over the last couple of years. They're really supporting a major project that Mish and Poppy Van Granger are working on with elders who've been involved in the City of Perth Reconciliation Action Project and gathering those stories, which is going to be a really powerful outcome from those projects. But along the way, Zoe and Rebecca have been the Perth-based team from the ESOP shop, and they've joined us today, which is just really lovely to have you on that journey with us. So thank you. And we'll be hearing more about our partnership over time. But I think that's enough. I mean, all sorts of people contribute to days like this, but most of all, you guys. So let's go off and celebrate. Go forth with freedom. What else are we going forth with?
Equality.
Freedom, equality,
dignity,
joy, hope,
belonging,
dignity and belonging.